This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back continuing our trudge through the previews, which are our NFL previews. We have finished the North, so we're kind of going from the North. We did NFC, AFC. You guys can check those out on our podcast services and our YouTube channel. We now move to the South, Mark, and we do, if you're new to these, we start with the NFC, then we do the AFC, so the next 2 weeks will be in the South before we go West, and then we go East. Before we get into everything, though, first off, the Onside Kick, if you haven't discovered by now, professional football podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. And how you support us is patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. We've got 3 tiers, the bronze, silver, and gold for you guys to check us out on. At that bronze tier, the lowest $1. You get to join our Discord server. You get the MVP podcast a month early before everyone else. And it's kind of that base tier, and then the gold tier are highest. You get to come on a podcast and talk about what you would like to talk about. Check that down below in the link in the description. But Mark, it's pretty much business as usual here. I said NFC South, how we do it. We start with the worst. We go up to first, so that means we'll go Buccaneers, then the Panthers, then the Falcons, and then we'll end the podcast out with the New Orleans Saints. And just like we've done the other teams so far, the Buccaneers last year coming in 3rd overall in offensive yards per game, just over 415. They were 12th in points per game, just over 24 points, almost to 25 points per game last year. But their defense was not good. 27th in yards per game, giving up 383 yards. And they gave up the second most points right behind the Bengals, 29 points per game. You can also check out a conversation that Mark and I had about Jameis Winston, and can Bruce Arians bring the most out of him? I'll probably have that pop up above our heads right now. But Mark, the question I want to ask you about the Buccaneers is, with everything that they have in free agency, they didn't do a lot. I mean, they signed some quarterbacks in Griffin and Blaine Gabbert. They bring in Perryman from the Baltimore Ravens, who drafted him. I want to ask you, Todd Bowles, also the new DC, are the Bucs going to be able to do enough this year to kind of flip the script and not end up being the worst team in the NFC South in 2019?
I don't know. It's such a tough one when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because on paper for the past 3 years, they have been a good team. Mm-hmm. They've been a team that should do much better than they have. And there's been 2 big issues when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And people might disagree with one of them, but Dirk Koetter was a huge issue. Lovie Smith was a big issue too. Took a really good defense and made it worse.
But Lovie also got ran out of town because, hey, we got this guy. We got this offensive guy that can do great things with Jameis Winston. Well, and then he didn't.
I hate to say it, but Lovie Smith deserved to be taken out of town because, like I said, he took their strongest part of that team, made it worse. The strongest part of the team was the thing he was known for, which was defense. So Dirk Koetter couldn't get that offense. And like you said, the offensive guy, we believe in him. You know, he did great things with Atlanta. He's going to do great things here. No great things were had. And then the other part, of course, and this is something people might disagree with, is Jameis Winston. That Jameis Winston has never, even though he can put up some stats, he's never truly stepped up to be that kind of, I hate using the word elite here, but being that kind of elite leader that the team needs. I still go back to Hard Knocks. This is a crazy thing that this was a conversation had on Hard Knocks, where Koetter says to Jameis, he says, I need you to not fuck it up, basically is what he said. I need you to not be the reason we lose.
Basically, don't throw interceptions.
And what happens is Jameis Winston, more often than he needed to be, was a reason why they didn't win games.
Well, and I mean, another big problem, and this kind of stemmed from Jameis Winston because he was suspended at the beginning of the year, but last year I felt like this team had a little bit of an identity crisis at the quarterback position, because for 4 games, Jameis wasn't there. Ryan Fitzpatrick came out and played very well. Like, he played well in those games. Did they win every single game? No. But he played well enough to when Jameis came back, there was a conversation. And to me...
Well, it was more than a conversation. Jameis lost his job.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, even, like, after that, it was, okay, Jameis got the job back. Then they went back to Fitzpatrick. And from there on out, it's like, okay, we don't know who to start.
Yeah.
I know there's a pocket of fans in Tampa, in Florida, that Jameis is our guy, we're sticking by him, and I expect you to be like that. It's your team, you're going to back
This is your quarterback.
your horse in the race, you're going to back Jameis because he's your quarterback. But I feel like if Jameis was so good and he's our guy, why didn't the coaching staff have enough confidence to when he came back say, hey, Ryan, I know you played well, but Jameis is our guy? Because the confidence wasn't there, because you look at their stats. Technically, last year, Ryan Fitzpatrick, yeah, they were in the same ballpark, but technically had a better completion percentage than Jameis. He also averaged more yards per game because he was able to take the ball down deep, especially with Deshaun Jackson last year. And when you look at their touchdowns, yeah, Jameis had more of them, but he also had 2 more interceptions and about, 13 more sacks than Fitzpatrick had last year. So, I mean, the microscope offensively for me is going to be Jameis Winston, only because, like, I mentioned that weapon in Deshaun Jackson. Yeah, he's not here no more. Like, your wide receivers and your tight ends are basically, you got O.J. Howard coming off of an injury again. You've got Perriman coming in, one of their free agent signings. But besides that, you got Godwin, who played pretty good. You got Mike Evans, who's their guy in the receiving core. Other than that, like, this is not a stacked receiving core or a stacked tight end core. You pretty much got 3, maybe 4, if Perriman can do anything this year receiving.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, too, because you look at this team, and you've got Bruce Arians now as your head coach, and Bruce Arians is a great head coach. He's a guy who's going to bring a certain level of toughness to the team. He's a guy who's going to, I think, do a great job with Todd Bowles, who's a great defensive coordinator. Not a good head coach, but he was a great defensive coordinator. They're going to make this defense come back to what it was before Lovie Smith got there and kind of mess things up. They're going to make this defense really strong. But I look at this night, and yes, Bruce Arians said, I can work with Jameis Winston and Byron Leftwich is going to have quite the job getting the most out of the quarterback. But I look at that and I say, but Jameis he's done well. He's just never taken that next step forward. Are they really going to get that out of him? And I look at the rest of this team too with Bruce Arians, and an interesting quote earlier this week where Bruce Arians says, that they don't need a David Johnson. They don't need a Todd Gurley. They're fine with who they have. Which is an interesting thing because they're basically saying, yeah, I don't have a single great running back, but I think I got enough to where I'll make it work.
I don't think, like, Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones aren't the worst, and plus the thing I would think of is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers drafted Ronald Jones. Give him a little bit more time because he still is a very young running back.
Wasn't Bruce Arians.
Yeah. But I mean, he's a young running back where you don't have to rush in and get a veteran.
That's not what my point is. My point is Bruce Arians himself says, I don't have an all-star running back.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of guys who are pretty good, but I think that's okay. And I think that alone tells me that Bruce Arians is looking at this team, and still, despite what he said of I can work with Jameis, personally I feel like it's because Jameis only has really a year left. To me, it's really just I don't have my pieces right now, but I'm going to get what I can out of these guys, and I'm going to start to hopefully get this team going the way I want it to go in the future.
Well, and I kind of see that too off of the defense as well, because like you look at it, JPP coming over, they traded for him, I want to say it was in March of 2018. They bring him over, and he's on the team. You got Ndamukong Suh, who's the free agent signing this year, one of the big ones that happened very late, was on the Rams team that was in the Super Bowl last year. They bring in Vita Vea. They've got Carl Nassib, who was waived by Cleveland, who now the Bucs are going to bring in to say, hey, we're going to try to start you maybe on the left side of our line opposite of JPP, and then in the draft they go with a guy like Devin White, who could potentially be the kind of leader of this team in that middle linebacking position, to where I feel like the two things I'm going to be watching from the Bucs this year is, one, Jameis Winston, because I'm more of an offensive guy, and plus in a contract year, I want to see what he does with a new head coach. Because you're right, he's not Bruce Arians' guy. So if he doesn't perform this year, I wouldn't be shocked if Bruce Arians was like, well, Jameis, it was a good year, but we're going to let you go. I already talked to management, we're going to let you go. Where this defense is the second thing I want to look to, because last year, and I read off the rankings beforehand, the offense wasn't terrible. The defense was. Like, when you're giving up the second most points in the league, ask the Bengals. You're not going to win many games, because the Bengals didn't either. I know the Bengals were separate because they had decimated with injuries. We talked about them last week.
Yeah.
When you're giving up the second most points and you're giving up more points on average than your offense scores, you're probably going to lose the game. That's just basic math.
The thing I want to throw out there, though, with JPP is he's not going to play next year. And I wanted to double-check in case it's been an update, but he has a fractured neck from that car accident, so he's probably not going to play. So that's certainly not going to help the Tampa Bay Bucs.
So then it'll probably be Golston. It'll be Golston and maybe Nassib that could be starting on that defensive line.
I think this team is starting to build the right pieces. I don't think this is a team that needs to blow everything up. This isn't, the football giants, the Arizona Cardinals. It's not anything like that where they need to blow this team up. But I do think that this is a team that in 3 years, when they're good, they're not going to look anything like they do right now. And I do truly believe that Bruce Arians will make this into a good team. Especially having Todd Bowles as defense coordinator. I love that. This is a team that is going to be a dominant defense in, like I said, 2-3 years. They're going to be really good defensively. The question's going to be, what's this offense going to look like? Are they going to get the running back situation? Because Bruce Arians, think about the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, they had a strong-armed Carson Palmer. Yes, they had Larry Fitzgerald as well. But a good thing about the the Arizona Cardinals with Bruce Arians was they could pound the ball. And this was a very kind of balanced offense that you want to get out of Tampa Bay. Right now, I don't think you have that. The running game, I think, is going to need to do some work. They're going to need to get something, which I wouldn't be surprised if they try and trade for a running back later. Jameis Winston's going to be an interesting one, but he's got Blaine Gabbert as a backup who... Blaine Gabbert, I'm not going to try and even pretend is an answer at quarterback, but he has shown moments when he's had his chance to come in that he can at least be competent. Not even saying he's going to compete with Jameis Winston. I think Jameis has the job locked up right now. But if Jameis continues his downward trend...
Or if he gets hurt.
Then Blaine Gabbert's coming in. So it's a team to me right now where I'm not sure how that's going to go. Mike Evans, I think Mike Evans is on the last year of his contract, isn't he? If that is the case, I don't know that he's going to be here
I'm gonna pull it
for
up
that much longer.
Pull up a little spot rack for you. Mike Evans is... No, he signed an extension.
Oh, he did sign an extension.
Yeah, he signed an extension where he'll be a free agent in 2024 when he's 31.
Okay, so he's going to be there. You got him locked up, which is good. Which is great, because, that can be kind of a Larry Fitzgerald type of thing. But I really think that quarterback-wise, I don't think that Jameis Winston is done in the NFL. I think he'll move on to another team, and he's going to have his chance to do it again. I just don't necessarily know that he has much more leash left in Tampa Bay.
Well, and one question I'll ask about Jameis is, what do you think Byron Leftwich's role is going to be on this team? Because I kind of have a feeling like with Byron Leftwich hasn't had a long lineage as a coach. Quarterback, very well known in the NFL, but as a coach, he was a quarterback coach for the Cardinals for 2 years, OC for the Cardinals last year. Now he's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the thing that I'm kind of feeling, and on the good side, I'm kind of hoping this for Jameis Winston in a sense of maybe Leftwich can be that kind of player coach per se on the sideline, where Arians is more of that relationship where it's like coach and player, where Byron Leftwich is kind of like that mentor, not mentor, because I mean Winston's not like just coming out of the league, but he's that older veteran that Winston doesn't have to worry about taking his job because he's a coach, not a player. What kind of a do you think Byron Leftwich is going to mean anything to Jameis Winston this year, or is it just going to be something where it's mainly Winston and Arians moving forward?
No, I definitely think that he's gonna mean something, because when you look at when he was brought into Arizona, he was brought in, essentially to work with quarterbacks, and that's what he's there for.
Because he had Carson Palmer was the quarterback his first 2 years in Arizona. Yep. Then last year, obviously, Josh Rosen.
And that's the thing that concerns me, and I'm not going to blame Byron Leftwich at all with this, but Carson Palmer was already an established name. Carson Palmer was already a great quarterback.
He was on the way out almost.
Yeah. Then you have Josh Rosen, who we've kind of stopped trashing Josh Rosen. But for a while, right? For a while, people were just absolutely trashing Josh Rosen, and it's not really his fault that he was sacked a million times in about a second. But I just sit there and I'm like, I don't think we saw any development out of that offense and out of Josh Rosen. So we're gonna go ahead and say Leftwich. Yeah, we know that you got fired. You want our job? Well, and, where we don't have an established quarterback and we need a quarterback to, get more out of him.
And that's why I wonder if when it comes to the development and him on the feet, like when it comes to everything, like throwing less interceptions, completing more passage, which I'll say 64% wasn't bad from Jameis Winston last year. It's just Fitzpatrick was completing 66%, so it was 2% higher. I think when it's X's and O's, maybe it's Arians that takes that lead.
Well,
but when it's Byron Leftwich, it's more of that kind of like maybe I don't want to say what I was originally going to say because it sounds like he'd be a glorified babysitter, and I don't want to feel like Leftwich is that. But it's kind of like that guy that Jameis can go to, that he can have that connection to. Like, hey, basically.
Yeah. Well, he was hired essentially for offensive coordinator and the pass game coordinator. So I'm assuming Jameis is his responsibility.
Okay.
Is my assumption. And I don't know if that is maybe Bruce Arians kind of being smart and playing the game of like, I do not care if we lose this guy. If Jameis is not doing well, Leftwich is gone as well.
Do you think Bruce is calling plays on game day, or is it Leftwich that's calling plays?
I don't know. I mean, pass game coordinator...
That to me says that, hey, he may be calling plays.
He could be, but I'm not going to be surprised if it is Bruce Arians though. He is the head coach. You want him to be responsible for it.
Bruce ain't going to say, hey, everyone, you do all this, and I'll kind of just sit up here and
y'all have fun. I'm going to take it easy on the sideline. Yeah, that doesn't strike me as Bruce Arians kind of way.
Not at all. Any final things you're thinking about with this team before we dive into the schedule?
Not necessarily. I think like I said, I think that they made good draft picks and things like that, and they're kind of stocked up on defense through the draft and made some good free agent moves. I just don't think we're there yet for Tampa Bay.
And when we look at the schedule, so to set this all up, because the Bucs are the first team we're looking at in this division, we're going to see similar opponents. Obviously, they have 6 games against their division mates. The 2 divisions that every single NFC South team will face is the AFC South. So we have a South-South matchup this year, and also the NFC West. Because we've got Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals. Do I have the last one? Yeah, I think it's the 49ers, the West. For the Bucs, the only intermittent ones that are not on anyone else's schedule are the Lions and the Giants. When you take a look at the Bucs schedule, what are your thoughts?
When I take a look at the Bucs schedule, I mean it's a little bit scary because their division is tough. They got to, of course, play the Rams and the Seahawks. They've got challenging teams out there. The Colts are going to be difficult. They've got a lot of challenging teams. I look at their easier games, the games that, in theory, right now, should be easier. And I look at the Lions. I look at the Cardinals. I look at the the Giants. I look at maybe the 49ers, depending on if Jimmy Garoppolo truly is the next best thing to slice bread. We'll find out. But I look at those games and I sit there and I say, that means you really have to go out there and play upset if you want to get any better. Because you're, and part of it's just because of your division. Your schedule's not doing you any favors. So you really need to go out there and prove it. That's what I really think of when I first look at this schedule, is that they have to be a team that actually proves they can go out there and win games.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it too. And out of the games, because usually, you know me, I like to kind of predict how many wins they may get, even if it's way too early in the offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if the ceiling for this team is a similar situation to what we had last year. But when I look at it, I mean, I could see them splitting with Carolina. The only thing is they get their home game taken away in that sense, because that game is going to be, I believe, in London on October 13th. 8:30 a.m. game usually triggers London game for me. So you get that home game away. I still think they could possibly split against the Panthers, though. The Giants
This is a good year for the Panthers, though. They weren't that good last year.
And that's the reason why I'm kind of Where the Giants, I think they could win. The Cardinals, I think they could win. The Titans, possibly. And the 49ers are kind of like that because, yeah, it is the first game. But Jimmy Garoppolo coming back, we don't know what to expect because when they played him last year, they didn't. The big thing last year, too, that the Bucs had were, yeah, you beat the Saints and the Eagles out the gate, but that's because Ryan Fitzpatrick basically punched those two opponents right in the face. And we're like, hey, you weren't expecting this out of me, but also your Browns win last year, a 3-point overtime win that, if I'm not mistaken, was a game that the Browns almost won themselves and was one of those, like, man, if the Browns would have won this, they could have been a playoff team last year. So the Buccaneers, I will say, I still feel like this team is a prime contender for top 5 pick in the draft next year. That's how many wins they're going to get.
I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they're right where they were last year, 5-11 again, which is a little unfortunate and disappointing for our Buccaneers fans that are watching this video.
And I mean, your division is tough. Last year, you only got 1 win in that division.
Wouldn't be surprised if it's not much different.
The AFC South is tough. Like I said, you can beat the Titans, but really the other 3, the Jags, the Colts, and the Texans.
Those are really good teams.
The Texans would be my lowest one, only because you play them week 16, and let's see how healthy they are by that point. And then the AFC West, where it's like, hey, have fun with the Cardinals and maybe the 49ers. But
and the Rams.
Well, I mean, the Rams are a loss. Yeah. The Seahawks are at Seattle, so you ain't winning that game. Like, it's hard to win.
Yeah, when you said have fun, I thought of, like, have fun losing.
I meant, like, have fun. You might win those 2 games. Yeah. The Rams and the Seahawks, I see them losing. Those are both road games as well. And then it's just like the Lions, I'd side with the Lions because of where their team's at.
That's a winnable game.
But it's winnable, but I would side with the Lions. And then the Giants, I don't have much confidence in them this season. Any final thoughts before we move on into the Carolina Panthers?
It'll all be better in a few years.
Okay.
For our Tampa Bay
Mark's
fans.
on that. Jameis will be gone. Bruce Arians will bring in his guy or draft his guy. Hey, maybe this
Arians is a good coach. He'll make it work.
You know how the Cardinals sucked for luck? Maybe this is where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers suck for Tua.
The Colts?
Yeah, where the Colts sucked for luck. The Bucs maybe suck for Tua this year.
Cardinals just suck to suck.
Where they just, hey, you know what? We're just going to try to get the first draft pick and get Tua, and then sorry, Jameis, you're out of here. But Bucs fans, let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section about your team. What do you expect them to be? How high? How low? Same spot? Let us know what you guys are thinking. And Mark, let's move on into the next team, looking at the Carolina Panthers. If you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure to rate and review the Onside Kick on Apple Podcast. It means the world to us. Every 5-star rating really helps us get into the ears of more people, helps more people check out the podcast and find it. So if you could that today, it would mean the world to us. And we just talked about the Bucs. We're moving on into the Carolina Panthers, who were number 3 in the NFC South last year. Going through their rankings for last year. They were 10th in offensive yards per game with just over 373 yards. They were 14th in points per game, scoring about 23.5 in each contest. Defensively, they were also kind of middle of the pack and slightly below. They were middle of the pack at 15 or so 15 in defensive yards per game with 353 yards, and 19th in scoring defense, giving up 23.9 points per game. The big thing offensively or the big thing in free agency, I should say, is really nothing. I mean, yeah, they bring in Chris Hogan to a one-year deal. Bruce Irving signing a one-year deal. They also re-signed Darrell Williams and signed Matt Paradis. I hope I said that name right. Paradis, the center, to a 3-year deal. So, to me, not much noise being made. Like, yeah, I know Bruce Irvins is a big name. Chris Hogan did a lot in New England, but to me, the draft is where they really made some interesting moves. Brian Burns coming in with their first pick. Greg Little in the second round. They bring in Will Grier, although they have Cam Newton. The thing I'm going to ask you to kind of start this Panther preview is, what should the expectations be for the Panthers in 2019? Because really, besides, to me, the rookies that they brought in, especially with those first 2 picks, not much is sending shockwaves through this team or through this roster.
Well, here's the hard thing about this whole process with the Claw Up Panthers is what is going to happen with Cam Newton? Because he's hurt. He had to have surgery on his shoulder. He says it's going well. It feels good. You know, it feels like he's got full motion, but he obviously hasn't been cleared to do anything really too much yet. And at least as far as I know, I don't think he's been cleared, but I haven't heard anything in a little bit. The plan is that he will be on basically a pitch count. And you just drafted a guy like Will Grier, who I assume maybe will play if he needs to. I don't know who your other really quarterback options are. Not because I don't see their names in front of me, just because of the fact that I've never really even heard of these guys before. So it's going to be very interesting. If Cam Newton isn't ready to go out week 1 and play 100%, that's going to be scary, especially when you look at who's the last guy who didn't. Well, I shouldn't say that. Who's another notable guy who hurt his shoulder, came back a little too early, really messed things up, and then had to miss basically a whole year? Andrew Luck. You do not want to have an Andrew Luck situation where the guy goes out there when he's not ready, kind of rushed out there, didn't take the time to heal himself. And I'm not saying that about Cam Newton. I'm just saying when I read that he says, I feel like the rehab's going great. I feel like I got my full motion. He himself says, but getting cleared is a different process. It's just one of those things where I'm like, just because of the Andrew Luck situation, I get nervous and say, hey, take your time. No need to rush back too early because you don't want to mess this up more.
Yeah, and I mean, right now I'm looking at, this is an article from Pro Football Talk from earlier today as we're recording this on the 18th, and it basically says that Ron Rivera, Cam Newton's timing with receivers a work in progress, where it goes in to say the Panthers cleared one hurdle with QB Cam Newton as the offseason program came to an end when they had him on the field throwing passes during minicamp. Newton spent much of the offseason rehabbing after shoulder surgery and focusing on tweaks in his mechanics that are designed to avoid further mechanical issues. So those throws represented a big step for Newton. There are others to take once the team gets into training camp. So kind of like what you're saying. He's out there in minicamp throwing to receivers, working on, it's a more compact motion that he's going to have.
But it's not real
But he's not
yet.
cleared. He's not cleared to play. We'll see what happens in training camp. And the thing that I wonder, and to me, I kind of see this as a, yes, that's why they did this, but I'll ask you, I feel like the Panthers knew that this could be an issue for this year, and that's why they drafted a guy like Will Grier, who we kind of talked about where would he go in the draft? He's an older quarterback. like him for the maturity, but he might be a little small for the position, might not have the arm style and the accuracy that you want for the position. Is that why they drafted him when they did in the, third round I think they got him in? I think... Could he be the possible backup to Cam Newton if Cam doesn't play this year?
Well, I think that's why he's there, is to be the backup.
Yeah, they got him in the third round.
I wonder about Will Grier, if it's just one of those stabs of like, let's just draft a quarterback here and see what happens. You know, maybe he'll be good and we can trade him. Maybe we'll use him. Cam Newton's 31 right now, so it's not like he's young, which is very strange to think about Cam Newton becoming a older quarterback. But the thing about Cam was having probably his best or second best year. Yeah. I mean, that 2015 year was amazing. There's no getting around that. But this was probably going to be one of his best games if he played 2 more games. Kept those interceptions low. He was tied for like his second most touchdown passes in only 14 games. He was on track to have probably his second best or right around second best passing yardage. Completion was the highest it had ever been. You know, he was being dangerous on the ground like he always is, but not necessarily being reckless on the ground, which is interesting because he still got hurt. So there was a lot to really love about Cam Newton last year, and we talk about them being the third best team in their division, but they were a 7-9 team last year. You know, it's not like they were an absolutely abysmal failure of a team.
2 wins, and they're possibly in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Because the Eagles were 9-7.
They could have been easily the team that the Bears said, welcome to the playoffs, instead of the Eagles. And especially because, I mean, yes, they won that game against the New Orleans Saints.
Could you have...
to end, but they could have won. So I guess that's a little bit different in that case because they won one of the games without Cam. But they had that other game against Atlanta that if they could have won that 8-8 team, it's at least a little bit better in that case.
Could you imagine the storylines going into that game if it was Carolina at Chicago for the wild card round? Ron Rivera coming back with the boys to come to Chicago, although the Chicago coaching staff is vastly different than what it was with him.
And looking at it now, I don't think it would have been possible because it would have been 8-8 still, so I don't think it would have worked. But it would have been
They would
cool.
have needed the 2 wins to get in.
Yeah, exactly. And one of those wins would have had to come from a Cam Newton game. But I like a lot of what this team has. I like what they can be. I don't think Will Grier makes much of a difference. I think it is just a little bit of that stab in the dark of, hey, we like the things this guy's got. We'll get him. If he ever plays sometimes, cool, because it is important to have a quality backup quarterback. But if we trade him one day because that's what he's worth, then that's fine too. We don't mind that. Carolina, we joked about it in the last segment with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is their year to be good because they kind of go back and forth. If Cam Newton's cleared to play week 1, I feel really good about the Carolina Panthers. It's just a matter of when is he going to be at 100%? And even if he's cleared, is he at 100%?
Well, and the biggest question to me is going to be the wide receivers for this team. Kind of like what that Pro Football Talk
because they
article.
Need some.
Well, it's because, first off, I'm going to say DJ Moore to me this year needs to step up as, hey, I'm the number 1 wide receiver on this team, because last year led the receivers with 788 yards. Christian McCaffrey led the team in 867 receiving yards. And I know DJ Moore, it kind of might feel to Panther fans like I'm putting a lot on him because
he's your number 1 wide receiver, so he's got to.
He's going to be entering his second year into the league, where last year he was kind of asked to do a lot as a rookie. And I mean, when they made that pick, 24th in the 2018 draft, I remember us sitting here watching the draft going, whoa, that was okay. Like, I didn't expect DJ Moore to be a first-round pick in that draft. And now it's kind of like, all right, year 2, it's kind of like what you said. Well, yeah, you know what? Wash that stuff off. You're a rookie. There's going to be no passes this year. You're expected to be the number 1. You got to step up and fill those shoes because we got no one else to do it. Unless they expect Torrey Smith to fill those shoes.
Chris Hogan.
I don't know exactly what it is. And those two, Smith and Hogan, I think all three of them need to have a really good year, because one of the losses that the Panthers don't have this year is Devin Funchess. So somebody needs to take over that production, whether that's Hogan, whether that's Smith, whether it's both of them. They need more yards. And I'm going to say they need an 1,000-yard receiver out of one of these guys in order to make the playoffs, because they got an 1,000-yard rushing performance out of Christian last year. Almost got the double, 1,000 rushing, 1,000 receiving from him last year.
And the fact that, last year, and the last 2 years, Greg Olson's been hurt, and he's such a huge part of this offense. So if they can have him be healthy, that's great. But if he's not, because he's up there in age quite a bit, they do need guys like Hogan and Torrey Smith and DJ Moore to kind of step up. But the interesting thing to me when I look at this is, yes, DJ Moore's supposed to be your number one, but like Wright, Hogan, Smith, to me it's just very much a collection of kind of guys who are like
receiver by committee almost.
Yeah, they've had moments where they've flashed, but they haven't had the consistency that you're really hoping for. And that to me is a little bit of a concern from the team that remembers Kelvin Benjamin and everything he was supposed to be and didn't turn out to be. A team that's been trying to figure out the wide receiver situation since saying, see ya, Steve Smith, which always seems like a mistake. They've still been trying to figure it out, and they still haven't been able to figure it out. And when they were their best, it's because of the running game. They've got Christian McCaffrey. They've got the running game. They've got him to be a pass catcher as well. They just need a little bit more support from those wide receivers to be better.
What's your confidence that Greg Olsen can stay healthy? Because to me, the thing that I look at is, all right, you haven't played all 16 games since, 2016?
Been a couple of years now.
You played 7 games in 2017, 9 games last year. It's one of those things where I kind of look at it, and I would say that if I'm Carolina, I'm going, I hope he plays every game, but this might be a pill that we got to get ready to swallow this year, because it's turning into a trend, and when you get up in age, the injuries don't, like if you're injured, those injuries might start happening once they start reoccurring as you get older. I think odds are, if I'm Ron Rivera, I'm kind of like, hey, I hope he plays all 16 games, but I'm preparing for Greg Olsen to maybe go down this year and us having to replace him.
It doesn't even matter if he goes down or not. I mean, he's 34 years old. He doesn't have that much time left in the NFL.
Yeah.
And my confidence level of him staying healthy for 16 games is about 0%. Because his last 2 years he's been hurt. And, pretty simple to me of a guy who's older, who his recent years, despite pretty much never being hurt, his recent years he's been hurt time and time again. It's just hard to come back for. And you sit there and you wonder, and you're like, how much more does Greg Olsen have in him before we do get forced to move on? And I don't know if the Carolina Panthers are really ready to do that yet, because you're never going to be ready to move on from a guy like Greg Olsen. He's an amazing tight end. But you're going to have to. You're going to have to soon, especially because he was such a crucial part, such a nice safety blanket for this team to take advantage of. And if he's gone, that's a big loss.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at the rest of their tight ends, and there's no one that really speaks out to me to where I almost wonder, if Greg Olsen goes down, do they go out and try to find a guy like somebody who got cut like from the Patriots, like Austin Serafin Jenkins, where it's not like, oh, you're not getting the best tight end, but we're getting somebody that, hey, we can maybe play at that first tight end spot.
I don't know. They got a ton of tight ends on this roster right now.
They got a shit ton, but it's like I look at them and I go, I don't know if I'm very confident in any of those guys to kind of fill the shoes if Greg Olsen gets hurt again. What do you mentioned Christian McCaffrey? I brought him up as well. What are your expectations for Christian kind of this year? Last thing we'll kind of look at before we switch over to the defense, because I looked at Christian McCaffrey last year, and he had a phenomenal season, especially if you had him in fantasy, where he was an 1,000-yard rusher. He was less than 200 receiving yards away from 1,000 receiving yards on the season. I ain't going to ask that first. Could Christian McCaffrey be a player this year that does the double 1,000, where it's 1,000 receiving, 1,000 rushing?
I think he could. I think part of that's going to depend on who the quarterback is, because you can get a guy like Will Grier in there, and all of a sudden he's not going to throw to Christian McCaffrey at all. It really depends a little bit, and there's such a dynamic part to Cam Newton of being able to extend plays with his legs that makes Christian McCaffrey even deadlier. If anything falls, I almost feel like it's the running game part of it. I think he can be used more in the passing game. And I could see him coming down a little bit in the running game, especially when they draft. I don't think they actually drafted him. I think these might be undrafted free agents that they picked up. But they picked up a couple running backs. One drafted, and I think the other one's an undrafted free agent. So they've got a couple extra running backs that they got. So they're trying to kind of give him some help. And I think part of that might be part of what Chicago thought they would have with Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen.
I'm glad you brought up Chicago, because I'm going to bring them up
right,
in a second.
And now have kind of switched to the Run DMC model instead.
Well, the thing that I completely forgot about, I found out by Googling Christian McCaffrey's name again, was last year he joined a club that only 2 other running backs are a part of, one of them being a former Chicago Bear. It's the 100 rushing yards, 100 receptions in a single season. I won't make you guess, Mark, but the Bear is Matt Forte. Did it in
Huge part of the
2014. He had 1,038 rushing yards, 102 catches. And then in 2003, I will make you guess this one. What Charger do you think did it in 2003?
I don't know. Just tell me.
LT, LaDainian Tomlinson, had 100.
Expect me to think back to 2003.
1,645 rushing yards, 100 catches on the dot. McCaffrey had 1,000 rushes, or 1,000 rushing yards, 100 catches as well. So he joined that last year. I think that's easy for him to do again, because even if, let's say, worst comes to worst, Cam Newton isn't cleared, I feel like if they do throw a Will Grier in there, the offense is still going to stay similar. It's going to stay the same.
Yeah, but you never know who a quarterback wants to throw the ball to and what they want to do.
I feel like there's going to be designed plays to get a play, to get a playmaker like Christian McCaffrey the ball, because if you have him on the field, you're not going to just forget about him because of what he can do.
You would think, but you would always be surprised at the things that will happen when you change things up like a quarterback.
What do you think we can expect from this defense this year? Another addition that not an addition, never mind, I misread that. What do you think? I mean, Luke Kuechly last year was completely healthy. Brian Burns, to me, the biggest addition to this team through the draft. Yes, they bring in Bruce Irving as well, where people are going to say, Ricky, you're crazy. He's the biggest addition to this defense. Did the Panthers do enough to bolster up a defense to support their offense in 2019?
Well, I think so. I mean, you've got Irving, you've got Poe, McCoy. Burns is such a solid combination. Then you remember guys like Shaq Thompson and Luke Kuechly. You sit there and you're like, wow, this team's good to go. They always have a great defense. That's no surprise there. They're going to have another good defense. And I don't want to talk like it's any surprise or anything like that in that case, that this defense is going to be good, because they're always good. They're always good. The only issues they've really had is when they've gotten banged up a little bit in the past. But they're a team that's making a point to say, our front seven is going to be really strong. We're going to get at quarterbacks. We're going to hit them. We're not going to let you get a chance to really attack our little bit weaker secondary.
And I will say, this team, I've mentioned it a couple times. It's like, wow, not many things have changed to last year. This was a team after, what was it, week 9? Was a 6-2 team. If you would go back to week 9 and go, man, is this team going to miss the playoffs? Not many people would say, yeah, they'll end up winning one more game after week 9. But you look at it last year, and it wasn't because Cam Newton was injured, because he was playing those games. But they go to Pittsburgh, get absolutely dominant. That defense got shell shocked in that game, that 52-21 game. And it kind of seemed like ever since that game, 1-point loss to Detroit, 3-point loss to Seattle, another loss to Tampa, another loss against Cleveland close. another loss close against New Orleans, another 14-point loss to Atlanta before winning the last game against New Orleans, to where I feel like if this team can avoid a Colossus kind of losing streak like they did last year, this is a team that should probably be a playoff favorite, if not a wild card, to upseed the Saints and be the new division champion in 2019 for the South.
Well, I think they'll compete for a wild card. I don't know about the division, just because I still think the Saints are just such a good team. But yeah, division-wise, or wild card-wise, they're going to be right in there. I like them more than I like Atlanta. I like them more than I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've got a real shot for it, and they were really just a couple games away last year. A 9-7 team could have gotten in there if they just made, flipped a Detroit game, flipped the Seattle Seahawks, or the Cleveland Browns. Some of these games that were just a one-possession game, that would have made a big difference for the team. And there was a few of these games where you just look at it and the running game kind of got stopped, and that really caused some issues for the Panthers, because they're a team that wants to run the ball. So they have to make sure that they keep that going, and I think that's why they tried to add a little bit to the running back as well.
And the Saints will definitely be a tough team. I just looked into it. Saints have been NFC South champs the last 2 years. Panthers have not won the division crown since 2015, where that was their third straight year. 2013, 14, 15. They were 15-1 that 15 year. That was when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Denver Broncos, which we all remember because of Cam Newton and his post-game kind of fall from that. But this is a team, like, defensively, I think they'll be fine. Offensively, to me, all the questions are three things: Cam Newton, Greg Olsen, and then that receiving core. Looking at the schedule of this team to wrap things up with the Panthers, we know what schedule they're going to look like. The AFC South, NFC West, their own division in the NFC South, and then two intermittent. They've got Green Bay from the North, and then they have, Washington from the NFC East. What are your thoughts with the calendar and the schedule for the Carolina Claw Panthers?
I mean, none of these schedules are going to be easy. Carolina has a little bit of an advantage, I think, to some of it. I like getting that they get to play the Rams early, because the Rams are, you hope, still going to suffer from that Super Bowl hangover from that big embarrassing loss. And if you can capitalize on that early, then go play the Buccaneers and the Cardinals, you're rolling into a really challenging game against the Houston Texans, while they'll probably still be healthy at Houston. If you can ride that momentum to help you out to win that game, that's going to be huge. So it's going to be a little bit of a tough one, and especially when you look all the way down to the end, Week 17, playing the Saints, quite possibly could be a game for the division. That's going to be a huge one right there. That's one where you say, I know it says 12 p.m. right now, but you can flex it already almost. I expect that one. If the Carolina Panthers are good this year, that's going to be a huge game.
Remember how we are with early flexes in June. Remember, I flexed that Bear-Viking game last year when we did these. I was almost right, because that was supposed to be a really good game, but it was not flexed.
It was a really good game, I think.
Into that 7 p.m. slot. Yeah, to me, I got to focus on that end of the schedule. Like Week 11 to Week 17, that is the part where it's going to be really tough for this team. And I almost wanted to include Week 10, but I'm not that confident in the Packers this year. But like from Week 11
at Green Bay.
But from Week 11 to Week 17, 2 games against Atlanta, 2 games against New Orleans. You get Seattle, the comforting thing that it's in Carolina, not in Seattle. But you got to go to Indy. That should be tough. Really, to me, the easiest game out of all these is that one almost smack dab in the middle, that Washington, because you'll probably have a rookie quarterback in that one. Don't expect Alex Smith to start this year for the Washington Redskins.
Or ever again for the Washington Redskins. They drafted a quarterback.
It just, to me, I wonder what it's going to be like where First off, I wonder what the record is going to be, because by week 9 last year, week 10, let's say, this team was 6-3, which was pretty good record. Is this 11 through 17? Is it going to be a 4-3? Is it going to be a 3-4? Will it be a 2-win, a 6-win? Like, what are we going to see within these last 6 games for them? Because it seems like the NFL was like, hey, we're going to backload your schedule
keep
and
it
just
interesting.
Push everything in and give you, like you said, the Rams week 1 because they're still coming off that Super Bowl hangover. We'll give you the Cardinals week 3. Both of your Buccaneer games before the bye. Oh, and one of them, the away game that you'd play in Tampa, that's going to be in London. Oh, we'll give you Houston and Jacksonville. Those will be probably your toughest games along with the Rams before the bye, to where if they can take care of business the first 10 weeks of the season, first 9 games of the year, then it's just, okay, let's get to work 11 through 17.
Yeah, the real test.
And if they can win those games, this could be a playoff team coming up in 2019. But any final thoughts about the Panthers before we move on?
Claw up.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Panther fans, let us know what you guys think down below. Are you clawing up like the Mark Weber? What are you thinking about your team? Playoff team, not a playoff team, tough year, not a tough year? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. And let's move on. The next team we're taking a look at is the Atlanta Falcons on YouTube. Welcome in, Atlanta Falcon fans, into the podcast. I've already checked out the Bucs, already checked out the Panthers, and like we do for each and every preview, I'll start you off with a little bit of a snapshot at what the Falcons were like last year. Offensive yards per game, they were 6th overall, 389 yards per game. They were 10th in offensive points per game with 25.9, almost 26 points per game. Defensively, this was another one where this team was towards the bottom half in defense. Not great defenses in this conference overall last year. 28th in defensive yards per game, 384 yards is how many yards they were giving up last year. 25th in points per game given up. They were giving up just over 26 points per game. And when we look at the free agency for the Atlanta Falcons, not much going on. No shockwaves. Kenyon Barner signed to a 1-year deal. They bring in Jamon Brown. They bring in Adrian Claiborne. You've got Justin Hardy coming in. Grady Jarrett. This is a team that, to me, was so close last year to a playoff spot, just like Carolina. They were 7-9. They had exactly the same amount of wins, so they were the same amount of distance than Carolina. I'll ask you this, Mark. What's the one thing the Falcons need to do this year to flip the script and be a playoff team, even if it's a wild card team in 2019?
So I think a big part of it is going to be the fact that they need to really get the defense to step up. Because you look at the offense, and they were amazing just a few years ago when they had that playoff run. I mean, the best offense there was. They had a really good offense, especially when it comes to scoring last year. Now you get Dirk Cotter over there who, despite having trouble in Tampa and despite having quarterback issues, the offense still was a good offense. Wasn't an amazing offense, but they knew how to score points. They knew how to move the ball. But when I look at it, I'm not concerned. You got Julio Jones, you got Sanu, you've got Devonta Freeman, you got Matt Ryan.
And Devonta Freeman only played 2 games last year.
Yeah, we're feeling pretty good about your offense. I want to see this defense really step up and be a nice support for this for the offense that's been so good. But of course, the other thing too is what's going to be really nice is that offensive line can be good.
Yeah,
because they desperately need to make that cohesive unit just gel, especially with 2 first-round picks for offensive linemen this year.
Yeah, and those were at 14. They got Chris Lindstrom, the offensive guard from BC Boston College, and then at 31 they traded back up to get Caleb McGarry, the offensive tackle from Washington. So those are 2 offensive tackles that you were mentioning, and to me, one of the big ones is, of course, offensive line, because, I mean, Matt Ryan was sacked 42 times last year.
Yeah.
You're not going to win games when your quarterback's flat on his back. That's just a proven fact. And to me, I wonder two things about the run game. Like, yeah, I know they bring in Kenyon Barner probably because they lost Tevin Coleman. He's now with the San Francisco 49ers. And Tevin Coleman was big for this team. Devonta Freeman not there. Coleman gave him 800 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns on the ground, only fumbled the ball 1 time. This was not a team that fumbled much. They only had 4 all year. In the rushing department, I look at this and I expect Devonta Freeman, if fully healthy, to bounce back to where he was. I don't expect a down year from Devonta Freeman. My big question is who's going to be able to pick up the slack in that second role, because the thing I always liked about the Falcons is they had that 1-2 punch between Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. My question this year, what's that 1-2 punch going to be? Is it going to be Devonta Freeman and Ito Smith? Or will it have to be Devonta Freeman and Kenyon Barner? Or is it just going to be Devonta Freeman and, oh shoot, we lost our backup running back and neither of the guys we have behind him can pick up that slack?
It's totally possible. I do think that there is potential as well. And of course, this one's going to depend on what happens with injuries and stuff like that. But for Jeremy Langford, if they kind of actually do something with him, Jeremy Langford, I think, got cut for a little bit due to injury. If he comes back at some point, he might be able to mix things up as well. And I only really say that because I'm taking a look at all the running backs that they have. They've got Smith, they got Barner, they've got the couple rookies that they've got, Hill and Freeman. There's so many different guys that's just been very interesting to see what this kind of looks like. It's a very tough battle here because you've got Freeman locked it up. Barner's got it, I think, locked up for the kind of number 2 spot. It's who's that third person that can kind of come in and provide some relief. It's a tough battle, but I really think when it comes to the Falcons, you don't go ahead and draft a guy 5th round, which isn't crazy, but draft a guy in the 5th round to be a running back that gets cut or that becomes your 4th running back. Yeah. So it's probably going to be him. So I think that's most likely going to be it with Barner and then Devonta Freeman, of course, to lead the way. This Atlanta Falcons offense, when they had a powerful running game, that was deadly. They were unstoppable. And part of that was, of course, Matt Ryan in the passing game too, but nobody could stop that offensive attack. But it really is going to be like, yeah, great, you have nice running backs. Can you protect anybody? Can you run block? And I think they're doing everything they needed to do this offseason to really kind of try and correct the issues from last year. But time's going to tell.
Is Dirk Cotter going to be good or bad for this offense? Because is this going to be like what we talked about with Tampa Bay with like Todd Bowles, where it's going to be, hey, as a head coach, absolutely horrible, but you know what? As an OC, he's going to do pretty good for the Falcons.
Yeah. I mean, he's done pretty well as an offensive coordinator, and he's been with Atlanta before. I think that's going to help out quite a bit. I think they'll get some success out of him. Last year, I think a lot of people had some questions about their decision, offensive coordinator-wise. So I think that this one makes sense to me in very much a Todd Bowles type of situation of like, all right, it didn't work out for you to be a head coach. Just go back to what you're good at, which is just a good offensive coordinator. He's had some really good offenses, so I think that this will actually work out pretty well for him.
And the thing that I'm pulling up right now is basically, so Dan Quinn has been there, this will be his 5th year as the head coach of the Falcons. The offensive coordinator each year, so 2015, it was Kyle Shanahan. 2016, it was still Kyle Shanahan. 2017, they moved to the Steve Sarkisian offense. And last year, they still had Steve
he was
Sarkisian.
I guess I didn't realize that he started in 2017. So I guess he was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was just last year, but I guess that makes sense.
So he is now the third Dirk Cotter is now the third offensive coordinator in the Dan Quinn era. And for me, eventually, I wonder if this team is ever going to get it right. Where, I mean...
Well, they had it right when they went to the Super Bowl.
And that was Kyle Shanahan. The thing with that was Kyle Shanahan was a little bit too good.
Yeah.
And enticed a team like the Niners to say, hey, we want you to be our head coach.
Really, the issue was you were supposed to win the Super Bowl that year, and you didn't.
Steve Sarkisian was more of like a, hey, you know what? You were the head coach of the Trojans, had a terrible... basically disease kind of take him over, and that's why he lost that job. Got a second chance with Alabama, wooed the Falcons enough to say, hey, we're going to give you a shot here. And after 2 seasons, it just didn't work. I wonder if Dirk Cotter can be closer to that, close to that Kyle Shanahan. But the thing about him that's different than Kyle Shanahan, we already know what he's like as a head coach. So to me, even if he's really good with Matt Ryan, the Falcons won't need to worry about a team trying to come in and woo him.
At least not for a little bit.
Because, not after year one. Basically because it's like, we just know how that Buccaneer thing ended, and we don't want that for our team.
It can happen. You can still get a couple good years, 3 good years, and someone says...
When teams are desperate,
we'll give you a chance. We'll give you a chance. Maybe it was all Jameis's fault.
Yeah.
Is what he might be kind of selling in an interview.
And when it comes to Matt Ryan, this is a guy where, he's pretty much the only thing on this team that, you're not going to question. The only thing I throw out there is... I think you're not going
to question Julio.
Well, yeah. With Julio, it was pay the man and give him the contract that he desires. One thing I'm going to ask is, so Matt Ryan had one of his best years last year, especially yards in a season, his best since 2016, his last year with Kyle Shanahan. He had almost 5,000 yards in a season. Can he replicate the same thing in year one of Dirk Cotter? Or is it going to be what we've kind of saw in 2017 of well, you know what? It wasn't a bad year. It just wasn't as good as the year before because Matt Ryan's getting used to this new coordinator for the third time in 6 years.
And, with Shanahan, it's not like it just clicked immediately. It took a little bit to get that gelling as well. I expect this to be a little bit of the same thing. It seems like with Matt Ryan, he takes a little bit, and it's not surprising, a lot of quarterbacks do this, but he takes a little bit to kind of figure out the offense, learn, gel. And it's not like he takes a little bit and throws for 2,000 yards. He still throws for 4,000 yards. But maybe the touchdowns go down a little bit. Maybe it's not moving as quite nicely. Maybe the completion percentage goes down a little bit, or the amount of first downs, whatever it might be. It takes a little bit to really figure it out and kind of gel. Not saying that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be bad this year. I just think that this offense is not going to be as strong as you hope and expect.
And that's why the thing I'm looking at it where I expect the offense to take a step back. That's even with Devonta Freeman coming back from his injury. But then I look at the defense. I know you mentioned it. This defense is not their strongest point, to where I almost feel like this Falcon team, if I had to predict right now whether they would be in the playoffs or not in the playoffs, I would kind of lean more towards missing the playoffs this year, because I think how I'm leaning towards right now, not to spoil anything because we still got the Saints coming up, but I would predict the Saints to win the division again. They're third in a row. The Panthers move up then to be that second team. Falcons fall to be the third team. And then the Bucs are kind of in the cellar still at number 4. I think this could be another year for the Falcons where it's 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7 at the most, where it's you're not a bad team. You're just not
missing out
good enough to make the playoffs. Are you similar thinking? Do you think they'll take a bigger step back? Because this is a team that was maybe 1 or 2 losses away from being a 6-5 win team instead of that 7 win.
And I think it's interesting, too, because Dan Quinn was kind of brought in to be this defensive mastermind. And he's the defensive coordinator as well here. But the defense is really not what the strength of this team is. The strength is the offense. They've kind of
gotten worse over the years.
So I think it's interesting, and I'm not saying Dan Quinn fire him right now.
You knew where my mind was going. I was going to ask.
I just think it's interesting that his strong suit is where the team is kind of not good.
I will ask this then, because you said don't fire them. Let's say they don't make the playoffs. Let's say I'll go on the positive side. They go 8-8, so one win better than last year, but they missed the playoffs. Are we starting then the 2020 previews with, is Dan Quinn on the hot seat?
Probably. We probably will be. This isn't a year for it, but if the year doesn't go great, not necessarily it has to go great, but if it's not a, kind of above 500 year, I think we are going to be asking some questions.
Because, the thing you got to look at, too, and this is when it comes to when they've made the playoffs. In his 4 years, they've made the playoffs 50% of the time. And each team they've lost to has gone on to win the Super Bowl. Where the first one was obviously the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So obviously the Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl. But then they lost to the Eagles in 2017, and the Eagles went on to beat the Patriots that year.
Nobody could stop Nick Foles.
Yeah, especially that Philly special, am I right? Looking at the schedule for Atlanta, I know this is the third time we've gone through similar opponents. NFC South, AFC South, NFC West, and then they've got the Vikings to open up at Minnesota.
That's a tough one.
And then their other one is, where's that NFC East? Oh, game 2.
Eagles.
They play at home against the Eagles. So what is your thought about the schedule with Eagles and Vikings being the only different teams compared to the other ones?
Yeah, I think it's tough because you got to start in Minnesota. That's going to be a rough way to start. Then you're going to play the Eagles, which were a playoff team last year. Carson Wentz is going to be healthy right now, we hope. Then you go to Indianapolis. You could be an 0-3 team to start this year. And, of course, then the Titans are a little bit easier. But it's going to be kind of difficult. You do not have an easy stretch anywhere. Your schedule is difficult the entire time. The only thing you might have going for you is Week 17 going to Tampa Bay. If Tampa Bay is not very good and you are competing for a wild card spot, that might be a benefit to you. Being able to have a little bit of an easier game. But just before that, you're playing the Jaguars, which should be a better team this year. At San Francisco before that, if Jimmy Garoppolo's the real deal, there's nothing easy, and there's no breaks in this schedule.
Yeah, out of all the schedules we've looked at so far, I would say this is the toughest right now of an NFC South team because of exactly what you said. There's no breaks. Like, I even tried to be like, 15 through 17, I was like, yeah, but Ricky, the Jaguars could be a really good team this year, to where I would say the only saving graces, if any, for them is that the game where they go to New Orleans, they're coming off of a bye. Yeah. So it's like you don't get Seattle on the road, you don't get LA on the road, so you don't have to travel cross country for those two. You get those two at home. Then you get your bye week. Okay, let's kind of rest up before that next week where you have to go to New Orleans to play the Saints. But then right after that, you got to go to Carolina. So it's like you get on the road against the Saints. Another tough divisional game on the road. And then you get the Bucs, which we're expecting to be an easy game, but we don't know what's going to happen any given Sunday.
That's not even mentioning the fact that in that case you have 5 division games in a row. Saints, Panthers, Bucs, Saints, Panthers. That's a season killer for you right there. Division games are tough. Yeah. They are very tough. And when you start back-to-back road games, that can kill your momentum. You just played Seattle. Well, I guess like you said, you do have to bye. But you played Seattle and you played the Rams before that. It's difficult. This is a challenging schedule.
And the last game against the Bucs last year, they only won by 2. But they did beat the Bucs both times last year. Carolina, they also beat twice last year. It was the Saints that had the Falcons number in that first matchup against the Saints in Atlanta was that overtime game that went 43-37. Yeah, that's another reason why what I was saying earlier of like, if I don't expect the Falcons. I know I asked it earlier. Hey, what do they need to do to flip the script and be a playoff team?
Yeah.
I don't think they do it this year. I think there's going to be too much hiccups between Devonta Freeman coming back with new offensive coordinator. This offense usually takes a dip when they do have a new OC coming in. And this schedule, I just think, is too tough. Like, yes, I know it's the same games minus the first two compared to every other opponent in the South.
Yeah, but it matters when you play them and where.
Where they're placed is a huge killer for this team. But I will say, coming out of that, if they, let's say, go, I'll say, what out of the, how many games is that? 5? If they go like 3-2 out of that, at least your next 3, you get the Bucs, which I know division is tough, but like you get the 49ers, who could be easier, and your only real tough game could be that Jacksonville game. But Atlanta fans, let us know what you guys think down below. I know you guys usually have more of that fan take because, like I tell Mark, this is the time of the year where everyone's got hope. Everyone can win the Super Bowl. Even
That's
the Cleveland Browns this year can win the Super Bowl with all the moves that they made. But let us know what you guys think down below. Are you making the playoffs, missing the playoffs? What to expect in year 1 of Dirk Cotter as the OC? Let us know down below in that comment section. And Mark, let's close out the podcast because it's the end of the podcast. I will do what I did at the beginning of the podcast. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That is how you help support MVP, help us get new equipment, help us. The big one for this year is helping us get a new studio so we're not in this 10 by 12 room that we're in. We thank Pete for letting us use it, but we want more space to do better videos and do more different ideas for you guys. So patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast is where you can support us. And Mark, let's end the podcast going on into the New Orleans Saints. Their breakdown goes like this. So last year they were 8th in yards per game offensively, 379 yards per game. Points per game, they were 3rd, scoring 31.5 points per game. Defensively, they were just above middle of the pack, 14th in yards per game, giving up 349 yards. 14th in points per game, giving up just over 22 points per game. Free agency for this team. I'm going to have to scroll down because this article that I look at refreshed itself on me.
Oh, that was nice of them.
This is one where they bring back Teddy Bridgewater. After visiting with Miami, Bridgewater decided to sign a 1-year deal with the Saints.
He didn't want to be in Miami.
They bring in Malcolm Brown on a 3-year deal. Jared Cook signed a 2-year deal. Mario Edwards signed a contract. They re-signed Will Lutz to a 5-year deal. Latavius Murray signed a 4-year deal, filling that hole of Mark Ingram. And they bring in re-signed PJ Williams to a 1-year deal. I will ask you this to start, because for me, it's about a 75% of where I'm sitting with this.
Yeah.
What's your percentage that the Saints repeat as NFC South Divisional champs and make it 3 in a row in 2019?
I'm feeling really good about it. I do think there's potential they could take a little bit of a step back. Because I don't think Latavius Murray is going to be Mark Ingram. But
he's got to be back
Kamara,
up to Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara did a pretty good job when Ingram wasn't there, so maybe he can again. But with that being said, I think that I'm going to give it like 60. A little less than you, but it's about 60% chance that they do it again. I do think that this could be a year where the Carolina Panthers bounce back really strongly and make their run at it. Especially when you've got it set up so nicely for week 17 to be that winner gets the division type of a game. But I do think there's a really great chance that the New Orleans Saints find their way in the division again. We'll talk about schedule later, but there are definitely some things that concern me in that case.
Well, and this is the one to me where it's like usually with the lower teams, it's like, oh, what do they have to do here? With this one, it's pretty much just staying the course. And like, you brought up Latavius Murray, where he's not going to be Mark Ingram. I think that was a huge signing for the New Orleans Saints because I liked what Latavius Murray did for my Minnesota Vikings last year when Dalvin Cook was injured. And if he's basically coming to New Orleans with the same role that it was expected for him to be last year. Whether he liked that role last year, whether he didn't, I'm assuming it didn't faze him if he's going to go to the New Orleans Saints and have that same role. But it was supposed to be Dalvin Cook is our number one. He'll get most of the reps, kind of be more of a receiving kind of speed back. And you're going to be our more traditional running back, 3 down behind Drew Brees, kind of a runner. And I feel like Mark Ingram was good, but Latavius Murray's also younger than Mark Ingram, which is better in terms of running backs when you can get that guy who's younger. I mean,
but I also don't know that he's going to be expected to have as much workload as
which I
Mark
don't think
Ingram.
is a bad thing.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing either.
It comes down to efficiency, where he might not be leaned on as much as Mark Ingram, but what will Latavius Murray be able to do in the times they do lean on him, because they are going to use both him and Kamara in this offense.
Yeah, and Kamara, I think, kind of can take over. I think I expect him to become a little bit more of a true number one running back. It's just going to be interesting if that really is as successful.
And I'm dead wrong. I'll ask you this, Mark. Do you think Mark Ingram is older than Latavius Murray?
Well, no,
because
not really.
I was thinking of both.
Isn't Mark Ingram only
head.
been in the league for about 5 years?
So Mark Ingram got drafted in 2011.
Okay,
so this will be
a little
his
bit longer than I
year
thought.
in the league.
Actually, yeah, that's a lot longer than I thought.
Latavius Murray got drafted in 2013. They're both 29. I mean, I feel like Mark Ingram, I've been saying his name for like ever.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, he's probably like 33. No,
I
he's
actually
29.
thought he was. Yeah, I actually thought he was even younger than that.
I'm also almost the same height as Mark Ingram. He's got about 2 inches on me. But that aside, this team, like the thing that's hard about this preview, there's not much to say. Like, I mean, offensively,
That's what happens when it's a really good team.
I mean, offensively, like running back. I mean, I'll ask this with tight end, because they give up Jimmy Graham. They haven't really had that kind of. Is Jarrett Cook gonna have a big year because he has Drew Brees?
He could, but Drew Brees is the guy who spreads the ball around. Where it's not like you're gonna have just an absolutely amazing year. And Drew Brees isn't the 5,000-yard passing monster that he used to be. He's a guy who hands the ball off nowadays. He's been kind of, I don't want to say tamed, but he's in a little bit of a different offense than he was used to before. So I don't think Jared Cook has to be an absolute dominant force like Jimmy Graham used to be. He can be just a above average pass catching tight end, and he's going to fit this offense really well, but he's going to maybe disappoint some fantasy owners.
I mean, I even look at this defense too, and just
it's great.
Like I totally forgot this team had Malcolm Brown on it.
Yeah.
So now their line is potentially Cameron Jordan, not Jordan Cameron, Cameron Jordan, Sheldon Rankins, Malcolm Brown, Marcus Davenport. Good effing luck.
Yeah.
Good effing luck with that.
The only thing that's a little bit weaker is probably the defensive backs. They did draft back-to-back safeties this year.
Yeah, I mean, the safeties aren't amazing to me, but I mean, they trade for Eli Apple.
Which is not exciting.
Give or take what you think there. But I mean, Marshawn Lattimore's not bad.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're bad. It's just that's the weak spot.
Yeah.
And like I said, not bad. It's just that a team's going to have a weak spot, and we found it in this case.
I mean, the thing I'll ask is this, which when it comes to the Saints, I think this is more of the kind of discussion point that we can hit, because this is a team, you look at them the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Getting to the playoffs, not the problem. Where 2 years ago, Minnesota Miracle, they were the road team in the divisional round.
It's not a miracle when you're the Saints.
Lost to the... Well, it's a miracle for me, Mark.
Yeah.
Because Saint fans, I know this is going to be like salt in the wound, but I don't care. I was sitting there in front of my TV, completely crushed.
Yeah.
Great. Game is over.
Everybody's talking shit to Ricky in the group chat.
The group chat was just salt in my wound.
Yeah,
to
it's
where
great.
during those games, I hate every single one of you.
It's amazing.
I hate
It's
you.
so
I
beautiful.
hate Dave. I don't remember Sean saying much, but he
Sean was
probably
talking trash.
I hate all of... No, it was Brandon who was being nice. Brandon was the only one that gets a pass.
Yeah.
Where the rest of you assholes don't get anything.
Beautiful.
Where... Basically, I remember that play happened. I don't even remember seeing Stephon Diggs run into the end zone. because as soon as he turned to run, I was running down my basement in joy.
Yeah.
Running up and down the basement, screaming because I was so happy that the Vikings were going to win that game.
And it was shocking. It was absolutely shocking.
So, point is, they lose that one.
Can I also say,
go ahead,
because why not at this point?
But we got demolished in the next game.
Well, there's also that. That was fun too. But can we stop just referring to things as miracles? Because like that's not a miracle. That was a young player making a dumb mistake.
I mean,
it's not a miracle. A helmet catch is a miracle. Like that, and that's not even called a miracle. That's the catch.
I mean, to have a player do that, I think is
have a player make a dumb mistake is not a miracle. A miracle would be like the ball tipped off of a finger and he just barely caught it. That's a miracle.
Let us have this, Mark. It's been 2 years.
The miracle is the Hail Mary that, just magically falls into the right guy's hands.
We call it a miracle because we were expected to lose. That's why. But my point being, they then, hey, we're just going to be the second best team in the league. Oh, wait, they go up against the best team in the NFC. And yes, it was in overtime. Yes, they got screwed out of that game
they did.
again.
They really did.
That's the one where it's like, if I have the Minnesota Miracle pill, if I'm a Saints fan, I could swallow because it's, hey, you know what? Like, it's our players' fault.
It's a dumb mistake, but it happened.
It was a good catch by Diggs because Diggs still could have dropped the catch. He still had to stay in bounds, which was really impressive. But for the Rams Saints game, it was basically a zebra screwing you out of the game. Or even Roby was like, "Hey man, I thought I got away with pass interference." But
he did.
And then Roby right after we go into the Super Bowl,
right? There's nobody I think out there. Whether you think that Saints fans overreacted or not, I don't think there's a single person out there who actually is going to say it was not pass interference.
Oh, they got robbed, like absolutely robbed. Here's the question I ask, two-parter. Number one, the serious question of if we go and based on levels, is this team going to be a Super Bowl team this year? And here's my a-hole question to that.
Yeah.
Will they lose in the Super Bowl because they lose in a
ridiculous...
first it was the wild card, or first it was the division, then it was the conference championship. Now they'll lose in the Super Bowl.
And now it's got to up the ante. Like, it's got to be... that Drew Brees just explodes on the field.
They lose to the Browns.
Right? No, see, that's not a big thing. Like, the ball needs to get snapped to Drew Brees, and it hits him in the face, and he gets a concussion.
I don't know. Being the team to give the Browns a Super Bowl win would be pretty embarrassing to me.
See, I feel like when the Browns win their Super Bowl eventually, people are going to be like, it's okay. The Browns had it coming. Like, they deserved it. It's like when the Indians lost to the Cubs. It's okay. The Cubs have been losers for 100 plus years. They deserve it. You'll be good another day. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Yeah, that's a little much. I think that they've been my Super Bowl favorite for the past 2 years. The odds are they will probably be my Super Bowl favorite from the NFC again this year. Because I still think they're the best team in the NFC. They still are the best team in the NFC. Yes, the Rams compete with it, but I think Super Bowl hangover matters. It more often does than doesn't. So I think that the New Orleans Saints do, once again, have a really good shot at getting there. There are things that I sit there and say, well, how are the defensive backs going to do? How's Alvin Kamara going to do with most likely an increased workload? And he did fine before. But there are just little things here and there, but there's such minor things when you compare it to other teams that you truly do expect the Saints to just kind of run away again. Maybe not be a 13-3 team, but I definitely think they're going to be right in the conversation again.
Yeah, and I know I forgot to throw this out at the beginning, but one of our patrons, Jake, who's a huge Saints fan, he was so upset when they got screwed, and he's always talking about how the Minnesota Miracle, me and him, are able to go back and forth in the Discord, which you guys can do for as low as $1, talk along with us. But, this is a team, even looking at last year, they were 13-3, and if you look at their losses, a 3-point loss to Dallas, which could have went the other way, 14-2.
Yep.
and they lost to Tampa because Ryan Fitzpatrick blew the doors off and beat them 48-40 in a shootout.
Yeah, they were
win both
shocked.
those. Those could have been a 15-1, where that Ram game could have been a vastly different game. Oh no, they were the
Panthers.
better. They were the better record. I forgot that game was in New Orleans, so it wouldn't have mattered. But like they could have been a 15-1 team instead of 13-3. And I know that doesn't really matter in the playoffs.
And really, Week 17, Bridgewater was your quarterback. That game's a wash, anyways.
So like this team to me, yes, like losing Mark Ingram is the biggest loss for this team. But I think Latavius Murray is going to be a good enough substitute to where you don't skip a beat.
Even if production goes down, you're hoping that it's not down by much.
So are we under the I'll say the impression that on top of the schedule that can they overcome the NFC South, AFC South, the NFC West, and then the North Division, they get the Bears. They're at Chicago Week 17. And from the NFC East, I got to find them, they're playing the Dallas Cowboys at home Week 4. Can this Saints team overcome what we have said is a pretty difficult schedule for the South in the NFC?
I think they can. The hard thing is, you got the Texans at Rams, at Seattle, Cowboys, who you lost to last year, although this time it is a home game for you. That's a tough 4-game start. But I've already said it multiple times, Super Bowl hangover for Rams. It's early, so the Texans should be healthy, but you never know when those injuries are going to hit. The Saints can get started and go strong. If they get through those first 4 games doing pretty well, then the Buccaneers, they have to go to Jaguar, they have to go to Chicago. It's another one of those, they don't really get any breaks. There's a small little one where it's like Cardinals, Falcons, Bucks. That's a little bit of a break, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be a difficult one for sure.
The thing that I wouldn't like if I was a Saints fan, not saying that they can't overcome it, but that I wouldn't like, and it comes before the bye, LA, Seattle, Jacksonville, Chicago, all away from New Orleans, where it's like, yeah, I know what you're saying, the Rams and Super Bowl hangover, but I don't think they're going to be a terrible team. They can probably still win the NFC West and make the playoffs. And maybe
I don't know,
be a
though, the
top 2
Saints,
team.
that's a big revenge game for the Saints.
But I'm saying, like, with it being in LA, that I think that'll be a closer game than what viewers may think we're implying. But, like, having those 4 games be on the road, I think is already trying to put the Saints against the 8 ball, to say, hey, we're going to try to stack the load against you in a way so that it's, hey, you were a game away from the Super Bowl. You're a really good team. You're going to have to earn it, which I think they will. This team, I think, is going to stay healthy. They'll play really well. They'll probably be 1-2. Their ceiling is 1. Their floor is 3. Like, that's how I see it in the NFC, where they're either 1-2. A bad season for them is that they are the 3rd best team in the NFC South. But I mean, that Chicago game too, I also look at that and kind of circle it because there are a lot of people that think now that the Bears made the playoffs last year, won the division, there's a lot more fans, obviously. They're like, oh, we're going to come and we're going to be really good this year, which, like, you guys should. It's not like you guys had a fluke. You guys have a really good team. But I feel like, how good are the Bears going to be? Are the Bears going to be a team that inserts itself into that first round bye debate or race? And could the Saints be the team? The Saints, not the Rams. The Saints be the team that gets bumped out into 3rd and has to play wild card weekend as the home team.
Yeah, and it could be potentially, especially, and I don't know if it'll be competing for the division or just a wild card spot, and maybe the Saints can play spoiler to the Panthers and knock them out, much like the Bears did to the Vikings last year. I don't know if it'll be that week 17 or what, but it's definitely set up for something, and it should be something. But I don't expect this team to be 13-3 again. I wouldn't be surprised if they were like a 10-6, 11-5 team, which is still a really good record. Still easily playoffs, and still could easily be the division winner here. But they might have to work a little bit harder to get into the playoffs this year.
Well, and the last thing that we will do here is I'll give mine first. If I'm going to give my early prediction of how I feel the division's going to play out, Saints are going to be number 1, Panthers are going to be number 2, Falcons are going to be 3, and the Buccaneers will be a top 5 team in the draft and be last place in the South.
Yeah, my standings aren't any different. It's Saints, Panthers. I do think Panthers will probably compete at least for a division spot, but the Saints are going to take it. Then the Falcons, which will be a few games back, and then, the Bucs are going to be quite a few back.
Well, and this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I know in Discord, I'm going to hear, or we're going to hear, what Jake has to say. Jake, our patron, that is a huge Saints fan. If you want to join us in the Discord, patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast, that bronze level tier, for as low as $1, you get to join the Discord and talk with Jake, John, Retro's in there, Pat's jumping in. You got myself, Sean, Mark, Brandon, Johnny. We're all accessible in there. So go check that out, patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. Want to thank Mark for doing the podcast with me as always. Follow him on Twitter at @the Mark Weber. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.